Hello, everybody. I'm Zeus Caraval from ZK Research, and it's week 43 of Real Time Recorded. I'm here with Dave Michaels. As always, Dave, hello.
Hello there, Zeus.
So we had.
What did you do this week?
Well, the first couple of days I attended WebexOne, Cisco's annual Webex user conference. It's actually become a pretty big deal. This is the evolution of their collaboration summit, but they made it really kind of a big standalone event. And there was a lot of news from the event, a lot of features, new devices. I think to me, the big takeaway is all the work that they're doing in hybrid work. And I think they've done a pretty good job of tying their network portfolio to the security portfolio and now to the collab portfolio. And if you look at the hybrid experiences that Cisco had outlined, all the different ways, when you think of hybrid work, it's not just work at home and work in the office. And even within work from home, it's work in the kitchen, work in the living room, work in the bedroom, and the office.
So this is my problem with the hybrid stuff, and almost every vendor is celebrating hybrid work, so I shouldn't be opposed to hybrid work, but I am, because I feel like hybrid work is so focused on the business environment or the office environment and the home environment, and then we have this whole conversation going about work is not a place. So I kind of feel like it's a contradiction. However, that said, what Cisco was really demonstrating, which is something I do like, is work from anywhere. And they really built out an entire studio of to show the work from anywhere concept. So I like the work from anywhere theme. I'm not crazy about the hybrid theme, but the work from anywhere theme, they had, you actually physically toured it because you were out in California, and you got to see they went from like a coffee shop to a medical exam room to of course, traditional offices and home offices and kitchens. I mean, they had really built out a complete work from anywhere environment. It looked pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, that's where I was going before you so rudely interrupted me here, is that because hybrid work has so many different definitions, they have a solution that can fit each one. And this, it'll be interesting to see how well it resonates with customers or how well they understand it. Because if you're working in a coffee shop, right, then you want a certain type of noise block that drowns out all noise, including other voices. If you're working in the office, maybe you only want to drown out background noise but leave other voices, right? So they've got a pretty sophisticated set of AI capabilities that can actually, and devices that can actually meet the needs of different types of hybrid work environments. On the device side, they did announce the Desk Mini, which is a smaller version of the Desk, which is a smaller version of the Desk Pro, right? And it kind of looks like a tablet attached to a speaker. They explained the design when I was at their event, and they needed to raise it because it can be used as a second monitor. So it's got to be, at least the screen's got to be higher than the than your computer monitor or your laptop monitor. But it's meant to be carried around and stuff, and so it's got an under $1,000 price point. And at that price point, I think you would see people buy it because it would just replace your second monitor, right? When I bought my Apple, the second monitor was $600, so incrementally a couple $100 more, and I get that.
It fills a nice hole because right now we've got the Facebook portal as the low-end entry point, and clearly a consumer device, but Cisco and Zoom and a few others support the portal, and that's kind of like your entry point for something like a kitchen. But I'm not a big fan of using that kind of a device for enterprise use. And so the nice thing about this WebEx Mini is that it's fully manageable from Control Hub and part of the WebEx story. So I think it does fill a nice little hole there in the portfolio. I like that.
Yeah, another cool device, and this might be the first cool device ever from Cisco, like really cool, is the
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, the headset made with Bang & Olufsen. And, they've had other headsets in the past, but, B&O is arguably the premier, audio company in the world. And obviously Sonora Jespu, who runs devices at Cisco, worked there, so they had sort of an in. But it's a very, very slick-looking device. I was texting Sonora the day of it, and he said that there's a lot of advanced features coming. Those things are loaded with NVIDIA chips, and so there's a lot of AI capabilities they can bring in. He wouldn't allude to what they are, or say what they are, but he said there's more stuff coming. So it's not just a cool looking device. I'm expecting a lot of advanced capabilities out of it. So I know you messaged me during it that you want one of those. So
I'm a big B&O fan. I've always been a big, back in high school, I used to go to the B&O store. I used to have the B&O phones back when they made consumer phones. I've been to the B&O factory in Denmark, actually, and so I'm a big fan, and there's no other brand like this. And it's a really interesting um, co-branding, because it's like, enterprise, home, consumer, premium consumer, but that's what hybrid's really about, is this blending of use cases. And I really like what they've pulled off here. It's not just a marketing thing either. It's the mostly B&O technology in the headset, but it's the Cisco colors. It matches the Desk Pro, which is nice.
Yeah.
It's got the WebEx controls on it, so it's fully integrated. The mute and everything's going to work on that. And I think it's going to be the new trophy in enterprise conferencing. I mean, like when we do videos, we typically don't wear headphones. I don't like to wear headphones on video calls. I do on podcasts, but not on not on video. But I have a feeling the rules are going to change. People are going to want to show these B&O headsets. So I think that was a really interesting move on Cisco's part.
Yeah, that was it was nice to see. The other big news there was big news if you want to call it, was WebEx hologram. I heard that was inspired actually from Star Wars, where Darth Vader was talking to the Emperor. That's, of course, now we've seen that in Star Trek Discovery, where they beam holograms across the galaxy. There's a certain latency and light speed, though, that they didn't account for in those sci-fis, but whatever. I
They
think
solve that in the future. They solve that.
yeah, okay, yeah, they go faster than light, I guess. So you got a chance to preview it, right? Like I did. Yeah, it works pretty well. The clarity is pretty good. It's not something that is going to be everyday use, obviously. If you're sitting in a meeting, we're not going to be wearing those. But I think for certain use cases, education, in fact, I talked to one teaching university. They want to use it for like virtual cadavers. So I don't know if you know this, but buying cadavers to operate on dead people is pretty expensive. And so if you can make a hologram of that, you can actually look inside the body, see what's going on. You can upload different diseases to it. So if you want to see what stomach cancer looks like, you just upload that. So there's a lot of kind of cool use cases for it. I think we're still a ways before it's kind of a mainstream enterprise tool, but it's a very kind of interesting futuristic thing that Cisco came out with, and that's good to see, because I think, to their own admission, they've been playing catch up to Zoom and Teams and things like that. Now they feel they have caught up for a lot of the whiz bang features, and now they can look ahead.
Well, it was interesting when I got to try it out. That I want to emphasize that it really is a 3D effect. It's not. Yeah. If you move around, you get to see from the side. The angles actually change. It's very interesting technology. It is a very specialized use case. I call it the prototype use case. We built this product. We need to talk about it kind of one-on-one and figure out how to make it better. But it's the way that these technologies start. You start off with a very specialized use case, and they go from there. I think it's a really interesting concept, and I'm actually pretty excited about it. I think AR is the way to go. There's a lot of excitement, particularly this week with Facebook and their meta stuff about this whole VR effect. But I have a tough thing with VR meetings. I know Cisco's dabbled with VR. Maybe you've done that too. I think it was like 2019. They had a VR booth at one of their events. I think it was the Cisco Live event. But the problem is, I need to be able to see. I need to be able to see who's standing at my door. I need to be able to see where my coffee is. I need to be able to take notes. And so I don't like completely covering the eyes in the VR situation. And so AR to me makes a lot of sense. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot more benefit out of the AR stuff. And this is a good initial use case. I imagine it's going to just keep getting better.
Yeah, well, and it is different use cases. NVIDIA at GTC a couple of years ago demonstrated something called holodeck, in which you put on a headset. But the idea was that you interacted with other people and objects. And so you could decompose a car, you could move things around. So if it's just you and I talking, I don't really see why we need to do that. I think see you, see me is probably good enough. It's really when you want to interact with objects.
So the other big news this week was Zuckerberg and Facebook, and I guess formerly Facebook, or I don't even know how to describe it anymore. It's a very meta experience, but basically Facebook is I don't know, it's a pivot or an expansion into the metaverse is the new thing. And to me, I think it's really more about changing the conversation. But what are your thoughts, Zeus?
I think it's about distracting from all the other stuff that's going on. I heard what Zuckerberg said about it. At the heart, they're creating connections and letting people, interact and stuff. But frankly, Facebook's been the most divisive social media platform out there for the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, they've admitted, the whistleblower anyways admitted that they actually not only make money off when people disagree, but they perpetuated, right? Facebook actually drives that. So for them, for Zuckerberg to come out and say that stuff was a little, well, not, well, a lot, I think, hypocritical. It'll be interesting to see. They've been trying to push into the enterprise. If all the stuff that's surrounding them socially is going to impact their ability to sell to businesses. And I know right now, we live in an ESG world, in a politically correct world, Dave. Companies do business with companies that try and do good for the world. And I think Facebook's got a big uphill to climb there. As far as the structure goes, as far as I know, it's something like what Google does with Alphabet, right? The parent company will be named Meta, but we'll still be using Facebook, Instagram, things like that. I believe.
It gets compared a lot to the Alphabet thing, but it's very different because Alphabet was just a holding company to bring all these Google brands together. Where Metaverse, and I really don't know whether to describe it as a pivot or an expansion. Zuckerberg describes it as an expansion. We've always been on the mission of bringing people together. This is the next generation. You could argue that they bought Oculus a few years ago, so maybe that's kind of true. But Oculus never fit the Facebook story anyway, and it seems really more of a pivot to me. It's not really leveraging a lot of the Facebook know-how or experience or base. It's actually kind of distancing itself, which I think is part of the intent. So, but to your point earlier, though, that I think the biggest issue here is that it's not just Facebook that has been so divisive, but it's also Zuckerberg himself.
Yeah.
That I think he's got a personal PR problem. So he's like, ta-da, we have something new, and I'm in charge of it. And it's like, oh, great, that's really exciting. And so I think that there's going to be some real challenges there. And of course, whenever there's an announcement like this or rebranding, there's all kinds of stuff that pops up. A lot of people are making fun of the logo. I've seen so many different versions of it, and there's been some conversation about it looking very similar to both the Webex logo, we just talked about Webex, and also to the Mito logo, which is actually a company logo. And so I think that we're going to see a lot of that kind of stuff coming up. But the thing that no one's talking about at all with this Meta stuff is that it's all vapor. It doesn't really work. It doesn't exist. There's no monetization figured out. They showed this wonderful demo, but the real demo that's coming is going to be full of ads, or at least they've got to explain the monetization issue. I'm not sure how this is going to be different than Second Life. And I think that Second Life went away because nobody could really figure out how to monetize it and make it all work. And so he hasn't really addressed any of that stuff. So the good news is he's got about 5 years to make it up because there's nothing near term that's going to change as far as I can tell.
Well, and he's got billions of dollars to do it. So, I guess he got so.
All right. Well, that wraps up this episode of Real Time Recorded. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back soon with another episode.